I think I was obnoxious as a young guy. I was like, I'm going to be the best. I would say, I think, when you're young, you got to, if you don't believe, no one's going to, and you kind of, sometimes that's what it takes at that stage, especially in the environment that I grew up in. You had to, it was like a bunch of burly guys, and you had to kind of fight your way into the lineup, and there was a pecking order and a hierarchy, and you had to establish, and so there was a combative aspect to it that forced you to have that kind of aggression and that confidence. So I mean, I think I guess what I always thought, because of where I grew up, that if you could master the biggest waves and you could ride the biggest waves the best, that kind of trumps everything. I just thought that was the trump.
That was Laird Hamilton. I'm Jamie Brisick. You're listening to Soundings, brought to you by the Surfer's Journal. The Surfer's Journal is a reader-supported publication. Visit surfersjournal.com to subscribe. So Laird, was there a moment where you knew that you had a kind of taste for giant waves, or just simply like adrenaline and kind of highly dangerous situations?
I mean, I think the highly dangerous situation realization probably happened more with my parents with me than with me initially. They said that I just, naturally gravitated towards, jumping off high things and just those things that made you feel, excited and alive. But, riding big waves seemed to be just my natural evolution of, in surfing, just in the ocean, that I was just attracted to, big shore breaks and powerful surf. And the bigger it was, the more powerful it was, the more I was drawn to it, like almost kind of out of my, conscious decision making.
Yeah. I mean, growing up in Hawaii, you get that a lot more than you do, say, here in California, where the oceans. I mean, I grew up here and I surfed around Malibu, and my first trip to Hawaii on the North Shore, I just remembered how alive the ocean was. I mean, I think I launched right by Val's Reef to paddle out to Sunset, and the rip took me, and I just felt this thing so alive. Yeah. But so that was like there from the very beginning for you, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, listen, when you grow up in Hawaii, you're on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And so you just it's like being in the front of the boat, you just get hit by everything that the ocean can throw at you, and you're really exposed. And, some of my earliest memories were, at the beach at Pipeline, which is one of the, not only one of the great, surf break, multiple surf breaks in the world, but also one of the most dangerous beaches in the world. And so that was, when that's your backyard, you just kind of get used to that. You just I mean, and I don't know if you don't ever really want to be used to it, but that's just what your norm is. You just kind of go, well, this is, and then you can go anywhere actually in the world, because waves are waves.
Yep. Yeah. When you were in those sort of early years, who were your heroes? Who were the people that you were looking to for like a guidance for your surfing life?
Well, you have to remember that was a fairly long time ago, and my dad, Billy Hamilton at the time was a phenomenal surfer, and his contemporaries were Jerry Lopez and Sammy Hawk and Eddie Aikau and all these. So, but those guys, I almost looked at them more like that they were my contemporaries too. That I was, even though I was a little kid, they were more on my same level. And so the guys that they looked up to, which ultimately were the guys that I looked up to as the kind of the grand masters, were, Butch Van Arsdale and Warren Harlow and these kind of, divers and kind of more intense watermen that were multi-skilled because they were from a little bit different time. And so it wasn't just, you didn't just surf, you did a bunch of these other things. And so these guys were, Jose Angel. I mean, and Jose Angel was in the same time frame as guys like Jerry, maybe a little older, but Jose was the kind of guy that would be like, the beach was closed, no one's in the water, and Jose is going to swim, through the break it pipeline and swim up to sunset, because that's what he does.
Sure.
So those guys were the guys that, and they almost seemed a little bit, more like superheroes, like the feats that they would do, and I think I looked at them because because guys like Bill and Jerry and these other men, they looked at them in awe.
Sure.
And so I was looking at them going, wow. And they're looking at them in awe. So I'm looking at them in awe too.
Yep. So, but it's interesting because it's a very, we're close enough in age and we probably came up around the same time. That sort of education that you had is a very different one to a lot of people I know, where it was much more the competitive ranks. And I think that Waterman kind of ethos, or whatever you want to call it, but that idea of a kind of holistic relationship with the ocean. It's not specific to riding waves on a surfboard. It's kind of all of it. And there's never a day that you're not connected to the water. It's it's a fascinating thing, and it's fascinating to see sort of how it's become your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm a little bit like in this missing generation, where I'm like young enough that I'm in, was when competitive surfing became more mainstream, but then old enough when there was just as big a group of people that weren't competitive surfers. They weren't surfing in that kind of competitive way. And so, as we go on, competitive surfing becomes kind of a little bit more of the dominant. And when I say competitive surfing, I almost mean like surfing in a crowded lineup.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
But that becomes the dominant group. But the group that was equally as dominant when I was young was this whole other set of men and guys that were canoe paddlers and sailors, and you got Joey Cabell, and I mean these guys are they skied and they rode motorbikes and they did all these other activities. They were like a little bit more like Renaissance guys. They were and part of it is, I think, just because there wasn't so many distractions, so many other distractions that there is, even now, even more than ever, but there was even less then. And so these guys would, they were sailors, and they would, we're going to sail to this, and we're going to canoe paddle here, and we're going to, and we're going to go dive, and then we're going to, and we're doing, they were just really kind of, and so I think I looked at that, I was exposed to that, and that had a huge influence because of just my age and what interested, what I was interested in. And I got affected in the competitive part because I watched my stepdad, who was a great surfer, in his day, one of the most beautiful surfers and really revered a style master, I would say abused in the competitive system, where he subjected his surfing into a competitive environment and was judged, and it was always so convenient the way the judging went, where the guy that won was now the champion, and he just needed to win by a certain amount, and he always did, and there was just some convenience that, and I think I can remember one event that was probably the most impactful on me in my kind of my perspective or my view of competitive surfing was I think it was either the Smirnoff or the Duke, and it was at Sunset Beach, and Bill was in it, and he probably surfed the best he had ever surfed in an event, and was at the peak of his surfing, and it was the final. He was in the final with Nat Young. He definitely beat Nat Young. I mean, there was no question that the consensus on the beach, and it wasn't my opinion. I was a little kid. I just was feeding off of everybody's consensus, and he definitely beat him. And then Nat wins by point something, whatever. It was not enough to really know the difference, and then was crowned the world champion, and wouldn't have been if he hadn't won. And so then it was just that kind of gave me a little bit of a well, that wasn't fair.
Yeah.
That wasn't.
So did that give you like a thing where you went, I don't want to go the competitive route. I'm going to take a different path?
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
I mean, I did because I saw, I mean, there was, guys like Jerry Lopez who, he was the master of pipeline. He didn't need to surf in a contest. He could win the contest at pipeline and he could win a contest, but he wasn't Jerry Lopez because he won contests. He was Jerry Lopez because he was the master of pipeline. He would surf pipeline with style and do a thing at pipeline in a way that he didn't need to win contests.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's interesting that when you so it was a conscious choice to go, I'm not going to take the competitive path.
Yeah. I mean, I think I got subjected to it. I mean, first of all, when we were kids, it was fun. We do these little kids longboard events, and it was and I had a couple moments of competitive, kind of exposure where I thought, because it was kind of like you're almost forced into it. Kind of like, hey, you're surf good, and and if you want to get a new T-shirt and a pair of shorts, then you go and go in the thing, and so but it immediately it would bring out, and maybe I already had this little seed planted back in my head, but it brought out the worst in me in just my character. It just was not something I didn't like. How it made me. I think, and I'm not. I think I was naturally aggressive as it was, and it just made me. I could see that it was going to make me unhappy at a certain point and confused.
Yeah. When you were, say, in your teens, did you have ambitions to be as big as well-known a surfer? I mean, you're one of the most well-known surfers in the world, and yet you did not come through the competitive ranks, and you don't have multiple world titles, et cetera, these sort of tangible things that other people have, whereas you're as known as anyone, and you've done it in a different path. Did you go, I'm not going to do that, but I'm also have giant ambitions as a surfer?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think I was obnoxious as a young guy. I was like, I'm going to be the best. I would say, I mean, I have people that tell me that I said that. I think, when you're young, you got to, if you don't believe, no one's going to, and you kind of, sometimes that's what it takes at that stage, especially in the environment that I grew up in. You had to, it was like, I mean, I used to say that, women and children aren't safe in the lineup in the old days. It was a bunch of burly guys, and you had to kind of fight your way into the lineup, and there was a pecking order and a hierarchy, and you had to establish, and so there was a combative aspect to it that forced you to have that kind of aggression and that confidence. So, I mean, I think I didn't know the route, but I definitely... I used to tell Bill, because him and I were pretty competitive. I used to I'm going to, he'd say, you're never going to be what I am in surfing. And I'd say, I'm going to be more than you've ever been. And we'd have a little, like brother friction, growing up, and so we were both growing up, but he was older than I was, of course. But we had that rub going I guess what I always thought, because of where I grew up, that if you could master the biggest waves and you could ride the biggest waves the best, that kind of trumps everything. I just thought that was the trump. Like, it was like, hey, if, and I mean, what you think it's going to mean before and what it means after is always different. But I definitely thought that it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter what trophy was bestowed and what title you had. If it's like Jerry Lopez at Pipeline. You could say whatever you want about Corky Carroll or anybody who was great, but Jerry was Jerry at Pipeline, and everybody else had to kind of go, well, he's the guy that, he's the guy that rides that place like that, and there's, and that trumps, everything.
Yeah, for sure. When you were so sort of blazing this entirely different trail that that it hadn't really been done before, right? I mean, I came of age like in the 80s, and there were competitive surfers, and then there was this new thing of like the photo surfer, right? And there were a few guys who sort of made their livings by getting their pictures in the magazine. But what you did of becoming who you were, was there along the way, did you ever go like, I'm not quite sure this path I'm taking? Was there ever self-doubt along the way? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like,
for sure. No, I mean, listen, my first real sponsorship was for windsurfing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sponsored in windsurfing. I went to Europe and was a speed sailor and like broke a European speed record and got a sponsorship on racing and, 50 knots of wind and breaking a record over there on a windsurfer. And so, I mean, I got some real sponsorship in windsurfing as one of the detours along the road to later being able to kind of fulfill my big wave kind of dream or goal or whatever, or destiny, or however you want to describe it. But there was a lot of twists. I mean, because it was all about subsidy, right? It was all about subsidizing, doing what it took to survive, to pay your bills, to eat, and to get so that you could be in a position to continue to pursue the goal, right? How do we subsidize to pursue the goal? I mean, I did that through cutting trees and mowing yards and running heavy equipment and being in a movie, or, being a model, or, I mean, whatever, anything I could. And still I do that. In a way, I still kind of, you're like a chameleon in order to survive life. It's like, what do they say? The average person will have, 3 different professions or 4 different professions in their lifetime. I mean, it's so, but I'm just used to that. I think that was something that I was just doing in the road to try to, to subsidize my mission.
Sure. No, it's so interesting. Before earlier today, I watched Take Every Wave, the documentary about your life. And one of the things that was really striking for me was the Millennium Wave at Chopu. And just how a single wave can absolutely change your life. I mean, and it seemed, and obviously, like, sometimes in a film they'll ratchet up the drama a little bit, but my read from that was like you were in a place where your relevance or your star power was maybe not where it was, and then a single wave at Chopu made you like the most household name surfer in the world. Were you aware of that? Like, in terms of this like bounty hunting of like going off to chase a swell, were you aware of like, if I get that one wave, my whole life can change?
No. I mean, it's what that wave represented, really, because until then, the technique of towing and the usage of that to try to ride waves that were unrideable was kind of a gray area, and so we weren't getting. When I say we, Buzzy, Derek, the Strap crew, Kalama, all the guys that had been surfing together and using the technique to ride bigger waves than people had ever surfed. It wasn't so defined. There wasn't a defining thing. So there was this kind of ambiguity and a little bit of gray around it, where you could kind of go, oh, well, maybe a wave's that big's been ridden, and da-da-da-da-da. And there was always some way to kind of disclaim it, like that's not really what they say it is, or what they're doing isn't really happening. And that particular wave solidified that. That was why that was such an important ride, was because, and at that location, because it was so clear of rideable, not rideable. And so it wasn't like you don't have anybody going, oh, so-and-so could have paddled into that, or blah, blah, blah. Where the, giant jaws, you still have people, even though they couldn't, you still have people going, well, they could paddle into that and ride that. And because it wasn't so like the wave is perfect, like the wave is defined, so was the moment, right? Like when you have these bigger waves that are they just have a different constitution, right? And that thing had the constitution of that wave, that was the thing that made that, like, the realization to the, and it was really to the surfing world, and America, because I had been getting a lot of support and love in Europe for a long time. The French really appreciated what I'd been doing. It's like an artist that you go and you have great success in your music in Europe, and then you come to America one day and they like discover you, and you're like, yeah, but the Europeans were appreciative, 20 years before, kind of thing. So it was that was when the mainstream media said, okay, he did that, like, that happened, kind of thing. That was it. That was it.
When you sort of let go of the tow rope and took off, obviously everything would have happened extremely fast, but did you know that this was going to be like a life-changing wave, or was it just like in the rush of adrenaline that session, everything sort of blurred together, and that happened to be the one?
No. There was 2 waves on the end of the session that happened. Actually, not just one. So people don't realize that there was 2 waves that came through at the end of the session after I had ridden, and then we towed some of the other guys in, and they rode too, and then the surf kind of really came up. And then the wind blew on shore and destroyed it right after that. But there was 2 particular waves, and the wave, and from my point of view, and at the time, and what I was riding, and waves I had been on, that was a death-defying ride. That was like I could die if I fall on this ride. No problem. I was real clear about the danger of the wave, and I had actually a little conversation with myself, because what happens, at least is in my experience, has been when you are in extreme awareness, you speed up all your assessment, and that slows time down. It's like film,
Yes.
You want to make slow-mo, you speed up the film. When you speed up assessment, when you speed up awareness, when you put your system on high alert, like, hey, you could die kind of alert, stuff slows down. You have time. Like, I had a conversation with myself at one point, like, hey, you should probably jump off. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, but if you jump off, you can't make it. So you should probably get knocked off. So don't jump off. It was like this 2 little,
mm-hmm.
I had the halo and the horns having a conversation. So that's how long that ride was. And, in the sense of that I could have a conversation with myself. But I had two particular rides, and one, there was a fishing boat had gone by and sent some wakes, and I went over the wakes on the way down just to add to the extra little bit of fright. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Get a little wobbly before you go in, but yeah, that was a genuinely emotional day. Those rides were emotional rides. It was sincerely emotional, and there was one boat mm-hmm. full of people, 6 or 8 guys that were there, and that's it. And it was not the fact that we got pictures of it is the only reason why everybody else saw it.
Yeah. When you're in giant surf, do you get scared? Like, do you feel fear, or you?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah. I don't. Yeah. Listen. You need to be scared. Like you want to be scared. Scared is it's what you do with it that determines the success and failure. But mm-hmm. You want to be scared. Being scared is very good. That's good assessment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, mm-hmm. if you're in a dangerous situation in life and you don't perceive it to be dangerous, that's bad assessment. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're not out there and you're not scared, then you're not. Now, how you react when you're scared and what you do with being scared, well, that's up to everybody.
Yeah.
That's their own unique, their own unique thing. But, the truth is, my relationship with being scared, I've been scared 1,000 times. I've been growing up as a child on the North Shore. I used to be caught in the rip every few days. Like, and every time I was caught in the rip, I thought I was going to drown. Mm-hmm. And that was for real. It's like I tell somebody, I go, when you're a little kid, you know how scary a scary movie is? Well, when you're in a rip and you're a little kid and you see people dying on a regular basis at that beach, you're scared. Like, this is real. And I think after you do that 1,000 times, I think you just get a different relationship.
Yeah. No, that's the thing that I'm trying to get at, is like, having done that all your life, maybe not consciously, but I'm sure you've somehow trained yourself to calm yourself, make smart moves within the fear. Like, the fear is all there.
Yeah.
Because of course, when I asked if you get scared, of course I figured you did. But like, somehow managing to contain it and managing to keep all your wits about you in that place. But have you thought about that a lot? Because I'm sure it just happened instinctually when you were young, but now you're at a stage of your life where you might reflect on it. Like, why were you able to work with that in a way that the other person would be scared shitless and never go back? You know what I mean?
Well, I think I was drawn to it, right? So I keep getting drawn to it. When you watch a really nice section in Free Solo, where, and I imagine you've seen that film.
Yes, for sure.
And there's a section in there where they do a test on him.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, well, he's not like normal people. He doesn't react when he's in these situations.
Yeah, amygdala, is that what it is?
Yeah. Now, I have a theory about that because I've thought a lot about it. And so my theory is that the system itself, it's so taxing on the body to be in the true state of terror, in the true state of fear, like life-threatening fear. That's very hard on the body, right? Hard. Like that takes all your senses, or your hormones, everything, your adrenaline, everything's lit, right? So, and after a while, the body can't sustain that consistently. If you're going to do that to the body every other day, the body's going to be like, hey, this is too much effort. And so it's going to start ratcheting back. It's going to go, well, the last 50 times that you were supposed to die, you didn't die. So now I'm not going to make you be so turned, so on guard.
Sure.
So I'm going to ratchet it back. And then the next 100 times. And then pretty soon you do that over and over and over. And you have, years and years of that. The body just starts reacting differently. And then it actually, because it doesn't differentiate danger, it's not just like, oh, this danger in this riptide's different than this danger when this house is burning, that's different than this danger when you're in a tsunami, that's different. It doesn't differentiate the dangers. It's danger's danger. Like the body's. So I think it starts to change the way your body reacts to those dangers, because it's like training. It's like you've trained the system through exposure, and over time, your system is going to become more efficient. It's just going to be, because normal hysteria and freaking out and being scared, that's not economic.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
And yeah.
Is there a moment that you think of that you can remember being the most scared you've ever been surfing?
I mean, I think so many happened when I was very young.
Yeah.
Very, very young. I think I was scared so often at a young age. I mean, I get pulled off the beach at Pipeline when I was 3-4 years old, and I mean, when you just think about when you're a kid and when things are the most impactful on a child, like what age is that? And what age is, I mean, this is early on, right? This is early development stuff that really has the biggest impact on you. So I think a lot of that happened then. I mean, I've gone through, I've been in a lot of scary situations over my lifetime. I mean, and avalanches and lost at sea and, and other places that I wasn't as comfortable as the ocean, places in the ocean. I've been at the bottom of the ocean, held down. I've been blown into the sky at Pe'ahi. I've been, scrambled eggs scrambled on the reef at Chopu. I mean, I've had a lot of opportunities to, but I think that in comparison with the fear of being a young man and all the times I was scared when I was young, I used to, a lot of times we'd go cliff jumping in the summertime just to deal with the psychology of the fear of the thing, and then jump, just that whole process of climbing cliffs and getting in these really high places and jumping off, and I think I spent a lot of time with that tool. Yeah. And I mean, with that comes a whole other set of side effects.
No, that was my next question actually. Like, is there where do you get your kicks after doing all that your whole life, right?
Yeah, but a lot of it's like what the come down after too, right? Of after these highs, you get, we always talk about how we get post traumatic after we ride giant surf. We get, and if you're not aware of it, you go into like, you like burrow into
sure.
But if you're conscious of it, then it didn't have the power.
Right.
It's going to stop losing the power because you started knowing how to deal with that. So that was very, very, very helpful. But I've been able to, one of the things that I think's been very useful in order to continue to have these experiences is changing the way I do stuff, right? Looking for new ways to be at earlier stages of development. It's like if you do one thing and then you're at this level, right? You get to this high level. It's hard to go higher on that level, but if you ratchet back and then do it a new way, then you're at the beginning of the curve again, right? And so you get that beginning, like, and I use foiling as an example, but you take foiling, and now all of a sudden, when we first really started foiling, I mean, you used to get on a couple, like a 2-3 foot wave, and that was exciting. Like, and when was the last time a 2 or 3 foot wave was exciting? It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's not, with 2 and 3 foot waves aren't exciting. But when you are able to do it, again, a new way, right? Just a new way, then you're on the steep part of the learning curve. And that's where all the fun happens. And then you get to this level of kind of, I would say, efficiency or skill, where the increments are smaller, and those are harder to find. Like, it's like if all I did was ride giant waves and tow in, I'd be pretty depressed, because at this point, I might not see another wave as big as the waves I've ridden already.
Yeah.
And I could be waiting 20 years.
Yeah.
And that would be a disappointing ride.
What are you most excited about now? What gets you really stoked? And
well, I mean, this things that we're doing right now, these things that we're riding, we're harnessing the energy of the wave in a way that we've never been able to. So we're actually able to, I would describe a lot of the conventional ways of surfing as like a waste of energy. It's like an inefficient car where, the thing goes fast and everything, but it just uses a bunch of fuel. And then when you refine the motor and you get the motor really refined, all of a sudden it's burning hardly any of the fuel, but you're going 3 times as quick and you're more efficient. So, that's what's exciting me. And that expands the possibilities. So that makes it, now we're looking at places that, how long a ride, how far can we ride? How fast can we go? Like, we're looking at these other, and now places that all of a sudden weren't even rideable become rideable. And so then it's like a whole new frontier, like it always is when you're at the early stage, right? When you're at the beginning of any kind of, of any development, it's always wide open. Then as we go, it gets narrower and tighter, and, and ultimately less satisfying.
Would you look ahead and think, okay, through my 60s, for instance, like, what's going to be the thing that I can sustain, and is foiling that? Like, it's not so dangerous and high toll on your body.
I mean, the dangerous is there. The
It is
danger is
dangerous.
there.
I
The
learned
danger is
that.
there. The speed is there. The sharpness is there. The danger doesn't really go away. I think that and the fact is that I think as we go, we're supposed to get better at making danger safer.
Yeah.
So then it becomes, danger actually is a lot more relevant when you're not as skilled, right? Or at the situation, because you haven't learned the boundaries. I think it's like getting hurt. I mean, you start learning how to not get hurt. I mean, over time, that probably is the deterioration of us.
Yeah.
Like, that's over time, we that's how we deteriorate. That's probably how we get old, and eventually we die.
I have a friend who's in his 70s, and he skates a skate park every day, and I've watched him skate, and the kids will ask him how old he is, and he always says, I'm 100 years old. But his thing is, when you're young, you're trying to push beyond your sort of your like threshold.
Yeah.
When you're this age, you skate just in it, because if you get injured once, you're probably done.
Yep.
So it's like this art of kind of like staying within the thing where you just don't fall off and break a leg or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I feel myself getting in that way with surfing, where it's sort of just stay in it and keep a consistent thing, and don't do anything that's going to pull me out and injure me in a way that holds me back.
Yeah. Well, but if you look at it, it's almost like martial arts. You look at a martial artist, right? Like, when is the grand master old?
Yeah.
Like, when does the young guy come in and beat up the grand master? Maybe never.
Yeah.
So again, like, and the young guys, he's flying around and maybe kicking higher and flying further and doing all the stuff. But then when he goes against the master kind of beats him up.
Yeah.
And so I think that part of it's that too. I think for me, I feel like, and listen, you get beat up, you get worn out. I mean, a lot of it, you just get mentally worn out.
Yeah.
So, that's the challenge. I think the challenge is, and my friend, Mr. Watermen, who passed away, was a great example. He was, 80 something and went, to the day he died full speed, but it's about enthusiasm. So I think that there's some, something in that.
Yes, definitely. Are you still chasing big swells? Like, we're getting into the winter right now. If you find out that Jaws is going to be giant, will you fly over for it, or are you?
I mean, Jaws has got plenty of guys. They don't need me. Like it's that lineup's full, you know? So, I mean, I couldn't say I don't have an interest in Jaws, but if you said there's this wave over here and there's no one there and it's going to be 200 feet and it's going to be the biggest wave that you've ever seen or gotten near. Do you want to go? I'd be like, I'll see you there.
Yeah.
Frontiers are interesting because they're expansive, and then the settlers come and they get settled, and then they're not as fun. It's like, hey, do you want to go explore in this settlement? It doesn't. Not really. I don't need to go explore in a settlement. I need to go explore in the wilderness and in the wildness, and that. So I have that. I have that. I have things in my mind and stuff I want to do that still exists that I'm looking for, and so I'm not. I think I'm less in need, and I've learned that. I said this to somebody the other day. I go, if a tree falls in the forest and no one sees it, does it really fall? Like if I go and I do things and that no one sees and no one knows and there's nothing, does it mean I didn't do it?
Yeah.
And what's the reason, and what's my intention?
Sure.
A part of it was before I had to try to figure out how to earn a living.
Of course.
I gotta go, hey, I gotta earn a living. But if I can earn a living other ways and I'm earning a living, and then I go, well, why did I really do it? What does it really mean? I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's something that's from my soul. It's for my spirit. It's for my life. And so as long as I can get that and get that fulfillment, I mean,
yeah. No, what's so interesting is your Millennium Wave was like, it was so well documented in print media, and it was also at the very end of print media. And now we're in the age of social media where everyone can kind of promote themselves and everyone has their own platforms. And it's such a different environment. And I think, things sort of don't mean as much anymore. Like it's replaced 2 days later by something else. And it's so we don't.
The turnover is, I mean, it's exhausting.
Yes.
I just go, it's exhausting. Like I look at that and I go, if I did what I did then, it wouldn't have meant what it means.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have meant what it means. So the timing of when it happened, it's all about timing with everything, right? It's all about that. But the turnover, I mean, I feel bad because it's just like, the consumption is at a rate where even when great things happen, and also too, like, one of the experiences I had is that we documented extensively when we were at Jaws, right? Mm-hmm. So we were trying to document the stuff that we were doing, and I got to a point where what we were doing was documenting what we were doing. We weren't doing it and then documenting it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference. And the mindset and the way you go about doing it was completely different. Mm-hmm. And that it's not being fun. And actually, I got to a point where I was praying for a day that was undocumented. Mm-hmm. That was something special that was just not documented, because then it couldn't be critiqued. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be compared.
Yeah.
Right. And we had it, right? We had it in the book, The Wave. There's a depiction. There's a description of the day that we rode waves, that we were over 100 feet, that we surfed on Maui during this really unique swell and unique storm that was close, and where my friend almost died. And that was the crescendo for me.
Yeah.
That was the crescendo, because I was like, oh yeah, this is what it's about. Mm-hmm. This is and I have 4 guys that went through that day with me, right? That went out and saw the waves, and that were there and were in it. And so we have this kind of, like, we were in a battle together. Mm-hmm. That only we were there, and only we saw, and only we know what happens truly with our memories. And we have that, and so we have that kind of a special thing. It's the magic of memories, right? Mm-hmm. It's like that magic of memories that we're just destroying with this consumption of part of it is like, I just want to have the thing to look at and be like, wow, yeah, I remember that day and we did that thing. But one of the biggest days that we ever rode, that we ever saw, that we've ever been in, that we've ever seen, we don't have any pictures. We have a few people that saw it, that know about it. We have a, you know, Susan Casey wrote about it in the Wave, and we have a thing. But and that's why when people are talking about 100-foot waves, I'm like, we rode 100-foot waves.
Yeah.
We rode. I know we rode 100-foot waves. Like, I know what 100-foot waves look like. We rode 100-foot waves, but we didn't run around going, "Hey, we rode 100-foot waves."
Yeah.
We didn't need to do that. We didn't, because we realized that had already played itself out.
Yep. It's so interesting. The ego thing is always fascinating to me, because especially in big wave surfing, competitive surfing in general, high performance surfing, but big wave surfing, ego and courage and confidence are such driving forces. And I think they're driving forces in everything in life. But I also sometimes wonder, I remember having a fascinating conversation with Tom Carroll shortly after he'd gotten sober. And he said that getting sober made him evolve as a person, but also made him way more cautious in big waves. It was almost like and I sometimes wonder if there's
I can tell
some
you
of the great,
about that.
yeah, some of the great feats are a result of a more immature sort of qualities within us.
Well, yeah, or some pain, something going on. I mean, the Chopu wave for me, I was going through a bad time in my relationship with Gabby at the time, and I was really hurt. I mean, it came at a moment when I needed it the most, probably in some ways, for my self-esteem, for just for my, it seems like sometimes you get things right when you need them to continue to be able to have the drive to make the run. Like if you didn't get it soon, that you might it's hard to keep motivated, right? For certain things, so, I mean, I know, I've been, I used to, one of my French habits was, beautiful wine. And I drank some incredible wine in my life, and I quit drinking like 14 years ago. And then what was interesting about that is that, okay, all of a sudden you get sober, and then you're like, then you don't have the guilt associated with that drives you to go train hard. Because you're like, I can drink, and then I can, and then I can go, and then I wake up super early and I train hard. But there's guilt that's driving you, right? Because you feel bad actually about it. Yeah. But you can, and it's also like, hey, I can prove that that's not slowing me down.
Yes.
That's not, I can keep, I can run the gauntlet, I can burn the candle at both ends, and I can just push on, and then you get like Tommy said, Tom goes, okay, I get sober and everything. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't feel guilty. So maybe I don't feel I need to train as hard. Yeah. That kind of thing. Yeah. Like you don't have guilt associated driving you, or some other mechanism, right? That's pushing you to do something to performance wise, or whatever it is, the same.
No, exactly. Or you grow to such an extent that you don't have to prove it anymore, it's funny. It's a weird irony, because it's sort of like the thing that keeps you hungry is maybe not like the ideal place, and you actually evolve out of it. But when you evolve out of it, you have less of a desire to show off or what have you.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, so knowing that process, right? So imagine you grow up, and when you're young, you're aggressive, you're frustrated because you're a young male, and you're, in a warrior's world, and you got to fight your way in, right? Yep. So you got to battle your way in, and then all of a sudden you get to some success, right? You achieve something, and then you're like, well, now I can't be frustrated. Now I'm not as pissed off, and now I'm not as angry. How am I going to stay motivated? And so I think what I experienced was, I just looked back at what was really driving me more than anything. And that is that I love it. And so at that point I go, cool, that was great. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was motivated. I was driven by it. But underneath all of that, why did I start it? Why was I drawn to it ultimately? Because I love it. Because I really love riding waves. Yeah. I really love feeling healthy.
Yep. Is the love as strong now as ever, do you think?
Absolutely. You know what it is I think I'm a little more a little more deliberate and a little more patient. So I'm not so I'm more like a laser instead of a shotgun. I think when you're young, it's just like you're using a lot of energy up. Yep. And it's going all over the place. Sometimes constructive, sometimes not. But I think now I feel like I'm just more focused. I'm a little more focused, and I'm patient to wait and know that, that I'm going to get it. I'm going to get the thing, I'm going to get the stuff that I need. Maybe not when I need it, maybe not how I need it, but it's going to happen. And so just having that trust, you know, that's a big piece of it. I think having the trust that you're going to be, you're going to be supplied with what you need, that you've been, it's like I told Gabby, I go, because sometimes we talk about everything going on and I'm like, it is okay. It's going to be okay, and it's been okay.
Yeah. So now, in the present day, what are your days like? What are you focused on? What are you working on? What are your goals? I
mean, for me, I feel like you got a lot of balls in the air, and it's just trying to keep the balls in the air. And it's relationship, it's your physical, it's your your spiritual, your just all the different things. And I have a mantra right now, like it's been the last 2 years: pay attention. Pay attention. It's about paying attention. And for me, I think it's always been about that. It's been there's a flood, there's a fire, there's a hurricane, there's a tsunami, there's a, there's a pandemic, it's pay attention. Yeah. Like you just need to, and I think that's suited me quite well in my life. And so just keep that going.
Yep.
Keep paying attention.
Yep. What is your morning routine? Like, what time do you wake up, and what's the first things that you do?
My wife calls me the sleep Nazi. I really like my sleep. It's important. I just know how important it is. I know how it makes me feel. So, getting to bed early is I need to be in bed before 9 o'clock at night. That's just and I mean, listen, we just went and a friend of mine just retired from the Bulls in Chicago. We flew, woke up at 4 a.m. and flew there and went to his thing, and then woke up the next morning 4 a.m. and flew back. And so, I mean, it doesn't mean that, I'm not doing those, but when you can, but I get up early and I'm a morning person. I like to do, the best time to do anything stressful is in the morning, taxes and sex and, sauna and workout and everything. But morning is the good time for stress. But yeah, I mean, every day you do some activity, some kind of training. I do a lot of thermal regulation, a lot of heat and ice. I drive my daughter to school every morning. Right. And this one, I on the swell forecast all day long. It's obnoxious. My wife says dog with a bone. Just no end to that. But yeah, normal days are just have do with work and training and and the family. I mean, family first, and first health. Selfish, got to be selfish, because if you're not good, you're not good for anybody. Yep. So first we take care of, and I like organization. So I like to be organized. I wake up early and organize the kitchen, and drink a bunch of superfood coffee that makes it so I don't have to eat until later on in the day. I usually eat a meal or two, depending. It's all about output. So my appetite consumption goes way up when I put time in the water. So when I have, when I go on missions, like if I go to Hawaii to go foiling, or I go on a surf mission, I'll put 6 or 8 hours in the water in a day, and I do that for a few days in a row. And then when I come back, I'll eat I'll eat a lot for days, just to recover.
Is your diet super tight, or are you allow it to go all over?
I mean, I'm not. The thing is Gabby describes me as a very disciplined eater. I will eat things that are disgusting if they're good for me. Like I have no problem drinking dirt. Like because I correlate that it's good for me. Yeah. It doesn't mean I don't like good food, but I definitely like. I definitely listen. When you grow up in Hawaii, like how I grew up, fishing, hunting, like when you grow up eating from the land and the stuff has energy, you have a different relationship with food. I never say never, because I think it's, they say if you don't eat any gluten, you become gluten intolerant. So I want to be durable, so that if I'm in a remote place, I can eat anything.
Yep.
Like I can just, whatever it is, and I can eat it, and I don't go into toxic shock because I'm so strict.
Sure.
And I've had friends that I've watched people that are so strict, it's the stress around it's not worth it.
Yeah, you can almost retract from the world.
Oh, completely.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, I know guys that take them 3-4 hours to make a meal. I'm like, they went the surf session. Where's the workout? And then your thing, and then it's already, then we're into the next meal. Yeah. And so I think there's something to do with that. But I'm always looking for, we need supplementation, right? So I'm always supplementing with minerals. I'm good on the hydration, important to hydrate. Mm-hmm. I always do breath work. So, there's kind of a priority of existence, but there's breath work, which is, air is the most important thing you have, because if Lord knows when you don't have it doesn't take long before you don't make it. Like 7 minutes is probably, the brain doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
3-4, it's bad.
Yep.
So breath work's kind of the top of it, whether it's cardio stuff and just breathing patterns in general, some kind of breath meditation stuff that when you breathe right, it's like active meditation. And then so breath first is the thing. Sleep, we were just talking about this. Hydration's a huge piece of that. And then, fitness, nutrition, then fitness, but air, air, water,
yep,
food,
yep,
rest, training.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of like, and I would describe it kind of, no stone unturned, but I'm a big believer in all the consumption that you are putting is affecting you, right? Mm-hmm. So what are you reading? What are you watching? I probably watch a few too many action movies with a bunch of killing. That's probably not good for me. But I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty, I'm aware of everything that's going in. I solar gaze in the morning whenever I can. As soon as I get up in the morning, I'm looking at the thing. I'm looking at the sun. I'm always kind of engaging in nature, right?
Yeah.
I'm always engaging in nature, even in, no matter where I am.
Yep. Were you always this way, or do you think you've gotten more this way with XPT, et cetera?
I think I was. No, I think it's just XPT. Really, all that did was put framework around a lifestyle that we've been developing through our lives that we had, and a lot of it we've been naturally doing.
Right.
I was doing a lot of the breath work and hypoxic training before it was. I knew it was called hypoxic training, and I knew it was these patterns. We were already doing a lot of stuff. The thermoregulating. I was always in the early days when I went to Europe, I'd go, swim in the glacier lakes, and, I just liked the cold, and I always was, I'd done sweat lodges and been around heat stuffs. And so, we grew up making emus, and we'd be around these giant fires. And so I've always been, I think it's always been part of my life.
Yeah.
Now it's just become, some of it we have to stage now because we're not being exposed to it by the environments, because, at times we're in Malibu and it's pretty civilized, and we're in a desert and we don't have all of the natural things that we would be exposed to if we were in more extreme environments. So we have to artificially create.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're fortunate that we can.
Yeah.
We have 2 ice machines outside, and we have some hot rooms, and we have, ways to kind of ratchet up the exposure, ratchet up the stress to keeping that muscle trained, right? That stress kind of, which is connected to the fear, because stress and fear are as intertwined. So those are all connected. Those are all connected. And so we're all, again, a part of the holistic approach, right, is trying to, keep that. If when I look at my diet, or one of the things that I'm probably, those that are like what I call, one of my, I don't know even the word for it, but it's like, I really love coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. And, of course, again, like anything, I think it's all about the quality. I have a theory that, if you do something every day, your toothpaste should be incredible. Your sheets should be incredible. Like, things that you do every day, that's not a place to skin.
Yes.
That's not a place to save money, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Consumption and soap and
sure.
Ingesting, and what do you put on your skin, and what are you eating? These are not spots to save.
Yep. If you were to reflect on your career, what are you most proud of? What is of your sort of legacy, or
I think the innovations. I have to smile like when I walk through an airport and Chicago, and there's a big shot of a guy standing up paddling with a little kid on the board, in the hallway, and I'm like, yeah, and then they got the 100-foot wave at Nazare, and those guys are towing, they're towing. There wouldn't even be that break if there wasn't for towing.
Yeah.
And, and the kid catches a giant wave at Tahiti. There wouldn't even be that ride without towing. Foiling's everywhere right now. I mean, you see foiling, it's like, so I think when I look at the innovations, that's the stuff that for me, as a scientist, I guess, as a innovator, having a scientific kind of brain, a mathematical brain, I think that's the stuff that, that I don't know, that's the impact. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. No, it's been interesting watching from afar, XPT, because I grew up in the generation of Jack LaLanne.
Yes.
And Jack's son, John, I surfed with a lot growing up. But watching you kind of evolve from, riding giant waves into health and fitness and wellness, it's been really interesting.
Yeah.
If you were at a dinner and you sat across from someone who didn't know you and they said, "What do you do for a living?" How would you respond?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I've said a lot of things. I said I was a garbage collector. I go, yeah, sanitation. That usually just gets them to turn and walk away. Do that to girls on the plane and stuff when I was younger. Yeah, I'm a farmer. Pig farm. Yeah, I got a pig farm. I mean, just make it up as you go. Human. I had a little kid tell me, I was just at this thing, and I go to the kid. I said something like, "Hey, where are you from?" Or so. I just said something like that. He goes, "I'm a human." I go, "Awesome." I go, "You and I have that in common. We're both humans. Perfect. We got that. Now we can get on with our thing instead of, well, I'm from here and you're from there, and
Yeah.
I go, if you're, but human. Yeah. What do you do for a living? I mean, what do I do for a living? Sometimes you're just forced to say, hey, you're a surfer. I mean, I'm an innovator. I usually try to, it depends on the person and the way they're asking, like who's asking and how are they asking. And if it's somebody with innocence and somebody who's really nice, I mean, I would say I'm an athlete. I'd say, like, if you said I made a living through athleticism, through either looking like I knew how to do something or knowing how to do something, or, something like that, like I'm an athlete. And then, but if somebody goes, oh, what do you do for a living? I'd probably say I'm a human. And then I'd go, anything I can to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like whatever. I mean, Brian Kalana has a great quote that I always quote, and because I'll never forget it, and I really appreciate it, which is, don't define me by my equipment. You know what I mean? And I think one thing I love is that I love the whole thing about, I'm Laird, and one of the things I do is surf.
Nice.
So, that's one of the things I do. I'm not a surfer, because that means that that everything I am is that.
Sure.
I'm not.
Sure.
I'm Laird. And then that can mean a lot of things. It depends on, it's like, if there's a fire, I'm a fireman.
Yeah.
If there's a flood, I am a flood guy. I'm whatever I need to be, that's going to be best suited for the situation. And I think that feels the most natural. That's the way I grew up. You are what you need to be. But I'm definitely, that's why I said, what are you? I'm a human. What do you do for a living? Well, I'm a human. And then I do whatever I can to, feed my family and, and also kind of fulfill some of those, curses and blessings, which are the inner drives that you have you're driven a certain way, and not all of us are driven that way. And so, and sometimes people can look with envy and go, oh, I wish da-da-da, but you might not want to own that drive, because with that comes all this other stuff, which means you got to really make sure you got a nice soft pillow. You got to get a lot of sleep. You might have to boil yourself and, drown yourself and, break yourself over and over.
No, I really I appreciate what you do. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And,
really appreciate it.
And we'll probably see you in the water.
Yes. Soundings is produced by me, Jamie Brisick, and Jonathan Shiflett. Our theme song is Neptune's Next by Little Wings. The Surfer's Journal is a reader-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from Birdwell, FCS, Patagonia, Rainbow, Vans, Vissla, and Yeti. To subscribe, please visit surfersjournal.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again.
All of summer, cracking shrimps, Stinson boards had babes in cars. Wonder where the summer went to wave some sea.